Jacob's Well, a popular swimming hole near Wimberley, will remain closed to swimmers for the foreseeable future.
The underwater drone slipped silently beneath the surface, its powerful lights slicing through the crystal-clear waters of Jacob's Well. For the first 30 feet, the view was breathtaking. Brilliant turquoise water surrounded pale limestone walls as golden sunlight streamed down from above. The visibility was so perfect that it almost felt like the drone was flying through air instead of water. But this wasn't an ordinary exploration. The drone was entering one of America's deadliest underwater cave systems, a place where at least 12 people had vanished forever. As scientists watched the live feed, it descended beyond the sunlight into a maze of narrow passages, known by cave divers as the Trap. Their mission was simple: create the most detailed map ever made of the cave. Instead, the cameras captured something that would reinforce every terrifying legend ever told about Jacob's Well. Before we go any deeper into this incredible discovery, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the secrets hidden beneath this cave are far stranger than most people realize. The Well of Whispers. Nestled within the rolling hills of Texas Hill Country, just outside the quiet town of Wimberley, Cypress Creek flows gently across limestone that formed nearly 100 million years ago. Hidden within that peaceful creek lies a perfectly round opening roughly 12 feet wide. At first glance, it looks harmless. This is Jacob's Well. On warm summer days, the area is filled with visitors. Families gather along the rocky ledges, tourists snap photographs, and adventurous swimmers leap one after another into the cool, spring-fed water below. Fed by the enormous Trinity Aquifer, the well maintains a refreshing temperature of about 68 degrees Fahrenheit throughout the year. Its crystal-clear water and vibrant colors have made it one of the most famous swimming holes in Texas. To most visitors, it feels like paradise, but appearances can be dangerously misleading. Beneath that peaceful surface begins an immense underwater cave system responsible for some of the most tragic diving accidents in the state. Despite its name, Jacob's Well isn't actually a traditional well. It's a karst spring, the visible entrance to a vertical cave carved deep into limestone over millions of years, as slightly acidic groundwater slowly dissolved the surrounding rock. Over time, nature created an enormous underground labyrinth filled with chambers, narrow tunnels, and hidden passages extending deep beneath the Texas landscape. For most visitors, the adventure ends in the first chamber, a beautiful, sunlit pool nearly 30 feet below the surface. But for cave divers, that's only the beginning. Hidden beneath lies one of North America's most dangerous underwater cave systems. At least 4 chambers descend deeper into the earth, each connected by tighter, more hazardous passages. Divers have given these restrictions chilling names like the birth canal, the coffin, and the final squeeze, names earned through tragedy rather than imagination. Ironically, the cave's crystal-clear water is also one of its greatest dangers. The floor is covered with fine limestone silt that can explode into a blinding cloud with a single careless fin kick. In seconds, visibility disappears. Divers lose sight of their instruments, their partners, and even the safety line leading back to the surface. Panic quickly follows, and precious air begins running out. Over the years, at least 12 people have lost their lives inside these passages. Some were never recovered, their remains still resting deep within the cave, where rescue became impossible. Yet despite its deadly history, Jacob's Well continues to attract experienced cave divers, determined to explore the mysteries hidden beneath its calm inviting surface. Yet the danger never discouraged people. If anything, it drew them in even more. Every year, experienced cave divers returned with the same goal: to reach farther than anyone before them and uncover whatever secrets still lay hidden beneath Jacob's Well. The tragedies became so frequent that local officials finally decided enough was enough. To stop anyone from entering the deadly lower chambers, workers installed a massive steel grate made from thick reinforcing bars directly over the entrance. The hope was simple: seal the cave, prevent future deaths, and bring an end to decades of accidents. It didn't work. Under the cover of darkness, determined divers quietly returned, carrying bolt cutters and cutting torches. Time after time, the barrier was cut apart. No matter how many times authorities sealed the entrance, someone always found a way back inside. The mystery, hidden below, refused to let go. Eventually, scientists realized the answer wouldn't come from risking another human life. If the cave was going to reveal its secrets, it would have to be explored by a machine. Early one morning, a team of geologists, engineers, and cave researchers assembled beside the spring. Their equipment was already prepared. Parked nearby sat a mobile control unit filled with high-resolution monitors displaying live video feeds. Their newest explorer wasn't a diver. It was a compact industrial remotely operated vehicle designed specifically for hazardous underwater environments. Painted bright yellow for visibility, the robot carried multiple ultra-high-definition cameras, powerful LED floodlights, precision sonar, and sensors capable of creating an incredibly accurate three-dimensional map of the cave. A reinforced fiber optic cable connected the vehicle to the control station, transmitting live images every second. The mission sounded straightforward: descend into the deepest known chamber and complete the first detailed survey of Jacob's Well. Slowly, the ROV disappeared beneath the circular opening. At first, the monitors displayed the familiar beauty of the upper chamber. Sunlight filtered through the water, turning the limestone walls into brilliant shades of gold and blue. Everything appeared calm. Then the vehicle continued downward. As it entered the second chamber, daylight quickly faded behind it. Around 80 feet below the surface, complete darkness took over. Only the drone's powerful lights remained, slicing through black water that had not seen sunlight for centuries. Ahead waited the infamous birth canal. The opening was barely large enough for the robot itself. Every movement had to be carefully controlled. Too much thrust would disturb the loose sediment covering the cave floor and eliminate visibility completely. The operator reduced power and guided the machine forward inch by inch until it finally emerged into the vast silence of the third chamber. Everything remained stable. Cameras, sonar, and navigation systems all reported normal. The operator then aimed toward a narrow fracture in the rock, the entrance leading into the fourth chamber. As the ROV squeezed through, the walls tightened around it. The passage became narrower than ever before, while the floor consisted of unstable gravel mixed with thick layers of fine silt. Few people had ever reached this part of the cave, and none had visited it safely for decades. Then something unexpected reflected the drone's lights. It wasn't limestone. It wasn't sediment. The operator immediately stopped the vehicle. A metallic object gleamed faintly beneath the water. The camera zoomed closer. Standing upright in the gravel was a scuba fin. Silence filled the control van. The drone slowly turned. Only a few feet away rested an old scuba cylinder, half buried beneath layers of sediment. Mineral deposits covered its surface, showing it had remained untouched for decades. Nearby, A torn section of black wetsuit clung to the limestone wall. Then the cameras revealed the discovery no one wanted to see. Partially trapped beneath collapsed gravel lay human skeletal remains. At that moment, the mission changed completely. It was no longer an exploration. It had become the documentation of an underwater grave. The ROV remained motionless, while its lights illuminated the silent scene. The diving equipment clearly belonged to an earlier generation. Attached to the deteriorating wetsuit was a faded identification label. Using digital enhancement, technicians carefully sharpened the image. One letter after another slowly became readable. The name was Kent Maupin. Everyone inside the control vehicle recognized it immediately. Kent Maupin's disappearance on September 9, 1979, had become one of the most heartbreaking stories in Jacobs Well's history. His disappearance triggered extensive search operations, widespread media coverage, and decades of unanswered questions for both rescuers and the local community. Now, more than 40 years later, the cave itself was finally revealing what had happened. The footage exposed the tragedy with painful clarity. The tunnel was unbelievably narrow, while the unstable gravel behaved almost like flowing sand. Once disturbed, it slowly shifted and collapsed. Kent hadn't simply become trapped. The cave had gradually buried him beneath its own floor. But the discoveries weren't over. As the drone continued scanning the chamber, another pair of scuba tanks appeared. Then another diving fin. The realization spread through the room without anyone saying a word. Kent Maupin had not been the only victim resting inside the darkness. The ROV hovered silently above what appeared to be an underwater tomb, confirming suspicions that had existed for decades but had never before been captured on camera. For the very first time, the hidden fourth chamber of Jacobs Well had been captured in crystal clear detail. Until that moment, everything known about it came only from fragmented survivor stories, rough cave sketches, and the memories of a handful of divers who had escaped its depths. Now, there was undeniable visual evidence. The cave was no longer just a mysterious labyrinth beneath Texas. It was a living geological trap, constantly shifting, capable of swallowing people and preserving its secrets for generations. But one question still remained. Who was Kent Maupin, and what drove him into one of the most dangerous underwater caves in America? To answer that, the story returns to the evening of September 9th, 1979. Back then, cave diving was far different from what it is today. Safety regulations were minimal, standardized procedures were still developing, and experienced divers often relied more on confidence than strict protocol. It was an era when unexplored underwater caves represented the final frontier, attracting adventurers eager to reach places no one else had seen. Among those caves, Jacobs Well held legendary status. Its deepest known section, the mysterious fourth chamber, had become almost mythical within the diving community. Very few had reached it. Almost nobody had explored it successfully, and its unexplored passages challenged anyone determined enough to try. Kent Maupin was exactly that kind of diver. Experienced, confident, and fascinated by Jacobs Well, he had already completed several increasingly ambitious dives into the cave. Each successful descent only strengthened his desire to push farther. Joining him that evening was Mark Brassier, a young college student with a passion for adventure who admired Kent's experience and determination. Together with 6 other divers, they traveled to Wimberley, setting up camp near the spring. The atmosphere was filled with excitement mixed with the quiet tension that often comes before a dangerous expedition. As night settled over the well, Kent and Mark prepared their equipment and entered the water. Another diver, Joe, followed them through the first chamber and continued into the second. He watched as they squeezed through the narrow birth canal into the third chamber. Everything seemed routine. Then something unexpected happened. At the far side of the third chamber, Kent and Mark stopped beside the narrow opening leading toward the fourth chamber. One after another, they removed their scuba tanks and carefully pushed them ahead through the tight passage, a common technique used when spaces become too narrow for fully equipped divers. What surprised Joe was that no one had mentioned this part of the plan. Realizing they were attempting something much riskier than expected, he flashed his dive light repeatedly toward them. Neither diver responded. Joe struck his tank with his dive knife, sending loud metallic signals echoing through the water. Nothing came back. His air supply continued dropping. Knowing he couldn't wait any longer, he kept his flashlight aimed toward the passage for as long as possible before finally beginning his ascent alone. As he swam upward, something alarming happened. The perfectly clear water suddenly turned into a blinding white cloud. A complete silt-out was spreading through the cave. Deep inside the passage, loose gravel had collapsed, either disturbed by the divers themselves or by the unstable cave floor giving way beneath them. The very danger that modern drone footage would later confirm. Joe reached the surface by himself. Looking across the quiet darkness surrounding Jacob's well, he shouted desperately for help. Deep down, he already knew the truth. The cave had claimed 2 more lives. Emergency responders soon contacted Don Dibble, the owner of a respected San Antonio dive shop, a former Navy diver, and one of Texas's most experienced underwater rescue specialists. Dibble had answered difficult rescue calls before. He understood exactly what a nighttime emergency at Jacob's well usually meant. Even so, he gathered his partner, Paul Battaglia, along with a team of trained volunteer rescue divers, and headed immediately to the site. When they arrived, the remaining members of the diving group stood silently along the limestone bank. Their faces reflected shock, exhaustion, and helplessness. One diver explained that he had briefly attempted to enter the dangerous passage, but believed he had seen what looked like partially buried bodies beneath freshly collapsed gravel. Dibble approached the edge of the spring and stared into the black opening below. Years of experience allowed him to recognize an impossible situation when he saw one. The cave was too unstable. Visibility was almost non-existent. Attempting a rescue in total darkness would only create more victims. He made the difficult decision to wait until sunrise before sending anyone back inside. None of them realized the cave still had one final challenge waiting. Morning arrived with a heavy sense of purpose. The recovery team entered the cave carrying small hand trowels, one of the few tools delicate enough to move loose underwater sediment without triggering another collapse. Reaching the entrance to the fourth chamber, they encountered exactly what modern years later, the drone footage confirmed exactly what those early rescue divers had encountered. The entrance to the fourth chamber was completely blocked by a massive slope of loose gravel and unstable sediment. Rescue teams tried clearing it, one handful at a time, but every rock they removed triggered another small collapse. The cave seemed to refill itself faster than they could excavate it, turning every minute into a dangerous struggle. As conditions worsened, veteran rescue diver Don Dibble made a choice that reflected both courage and responsibility. Instead of sending another diver into the unstable passage, he volunteered to go himself. He carefully checked his equipment, selected game warden Calvan Turner as his backup diver, staged emergency air tanks at 25 and 75 feet, and secured a safety line from the surface into the cave. Reaching the entrance of the deadly passage, Dibble paused, took one final look at his pressure gauge, and prepared to enter the place that had already claimed 2 lives. Everything depended on what happened next. Even with decades of diving experience, nothing had prepared the research team for what the drone revealed. The high-definition footage confirmed that the 4th chamber was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Loose gravel covered the passage like a living trap, ready to collapse with the slightest disturbance. Instead of remaining stable, the cave constantly reshaped itself, burying anything caught inside. It explained why so many recovery attempts had failed, and why victims had remained trapped for decades. The discovery also answered one of the oldest questions surrounding Jacob's Well. Divers had never simply become lost inside the cave. Many had been overwhelmed by an environment that could change within seconds, where collapsing gravel, blinding silt, and narrow passages combined into an almost impossible escape. The drone transformed decades of survivor stories into undeniable visual evidence. Today, Jacob's Well remains one of the most respected and feared cave diving sites in the world. Scientists continue studying the cave using advanced robotic technology rather than risking human lives. While the drones solved many long-standing mysteries, one truth became impossible to ignore. Beneath the calm, crystal-clear spring lies a cave system that still commands respect, where a single mistake can become permanent. The hidden passages remain largely untouched, reminding everyone that some places beneath the earth are still far more powerful than the people determined to explore them. The drone answered one mystery, but it left an even greater one behind. It proved how the cave trapped divers, yet it could not explain why Jacob's Well has fascinated and frightened people for generations. Hidden beneath the Texas Hill Country, the well is part of the vast Trinity Aquifer, an ancient underground network that still remains only partially explored. While the drone successfully mapped the known chambers, sonar readings hinted at additional voids beyond the 4th chamber, suggesting the cave system may continue much farther than anyone has ever reached. Long before modern exploration, Native American tribes regarded powerful springs like Jacob's Well as sacred places where the surface world connected with the world below. Even today, many experienced divers describe an unusual feeling while inside the cave, a powerful urge to keep moving deeper despite the obvious danger. Whether that sensation is caused by psychology, underwater conditions, or something science has yet to understand, remains an open question. Researchers also point out that the Trinity Aquifer is still largely unexplored. Other underground cave systems have revealed unique animals that evolved in complete darkness over millions of years, raising the possibility that undiscovered life may still exist within these hidden passages. For now, nobody knows. Jacob's Well is far more than a beautiful swimming hole. It is a vital freshwater spring, an extraordinary geological wonder, and the final resting place of at least 12 divers. Even after the drone's historic mission, one mystery remains. Beyond the limits of its sonar, the passage appeared to continue before the signal disappeared into darkness. How far it extends and what lies beyond remains unknown. Perhaps the greatest secret of Jacob's Well is that even today it refuses to reveal where the cave truly ends.